Hello and welcome to Khyber Shards, a 5th edition actual play show set in the Eberron campaign world. It is Friday and we are coming to you with a KSA, and we are joined by Casey. Hi, Casey.
Hi. Hello.
So I've made this comment a couple of times now, and this is the weirdest one yet because last night we filmed the very last episode of the campaign for Khyber Shards. And so we're very ahead, and we're going to do our best to answer your questions based on what you know. So
Yes.
if later on it seems like we lied to you at some point during this episode, sorry, we're doing our best. But we needed to get very far ahead because this is going to be the last thing that Casey records with us for a while.
Yes. I am having my second baby boy in about 7 days from today.
Oh my gosh, it is 7. Oh. You said that before we started recording, and then it just now clicked with me. Wow, it really is like a week.
Yep. So
that's so exciting. Yay.
We have gotten in the episodes, yes, but I will be preoccupied in the next couple of weeks.
Very much, yes. So happily, we were able. Baby number 2 has been patient and allowed us to get everything recorded. So we're all set. So probably we'll get Casey back in for like a final KSA after everything's aired. But that's so. This will probably be Casey's last KSA prior to the end of the campaign. So if you're wondering why haven't we seen Casey in a while, that's what the answer will be.
That's why.
Yeah. So for today, though, we have a bunch of questions for Casey and a few for me. So we're going to dive right into those. Awesome. Emily says, Casey, if Shade had to choose between being Pog's groomsmaid and Solarka's bridesmaid, which role would she rather take in the Polarka wedding, assuming it still happens instead of Pog dying and or deciding that Solarka would be happier married to someone else?
Right. Making those assumptions.
Yeah.
I think it would be hard to choose. And playing Shade as Solarka's friend has been a little bit difficult because I never want to overstep Pog's relationship with her. That's obviously the more significant relationship, and you and Colin do such a good job with those scenes. But in world, that is one of, if not her closest, right, female friend. But that being said, probably Pog. Been together longer, and then also Solarka probably just has more to choose from for her wedding party than Pog does.
Likely. Yeah, no, that's fair. Yes, I liked that question a lot. That was very funny to me because I don't know where it should be, but Emily asked also to me, if Pog's mom had been brought back by Arandis, would Manny still be summonable? And there's an implied question of, is it Minnie or Manny? And it is many, as in lots. That was the answer to Pog's question. We are many, as in there are lots of us. And Colin, delightfully, in the middle of this extremely grave scene, decided that meant the character's name was Minnie, as in the mouse. Would they still be summonable? That's a really good question, because the implication of the answer was that this entity is not just one spirit, but it's also been suggested that one of the spirits that is within this entity has been the one holding them there. And so probably not, I guess would be my answer, is it would probably need to significantly alter Pog's character as far as how that aspect of his mechanics works. So yeah. Emily continues with Casey. Do you think Shade would ever want to have kids?
Oof.
Timely question.
Right.
This would have been a great segue into that announcement.
Oh, that's so true. I have thought about this, Emily, even before you asked this, just in world trying to figure that out, and I don't know. I worry that Shade could want kids for all the wrong reasons. Um, Not having family of her own, so to speak. And so sort of creating her own family and having the kids fulfill that for her. Um, I worry that as a player, I worry that she wouldn't be a good mother in the sense that like she's going to train them to survive. But also, nurture is so important when it
It's
comes
true.
to raising children. Um, And so what a dissatisfactory answer, but I don't know. And I have thought of all of the reasons that she may or may not want them. Um, I would probably say I think Shade is on a trajectory of being a healthier adult
Mm.
emotionally than she has been. Um, and I think that if she continues that trajectory, all of a sudden I can't say that word. If she continues that direction, I think she would want kids. I think the idea of having a family would eventually be important to her, and I think she could get into a place in which it wasn't um, completely self-serving in having them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think she's there.
Yeah. And then Laura says, maybe you can't answer this, but what does Shade think of Ari's desire to explore the world? Would that fit her lifestyle? That's funny. This is a conversation that we sort of had off air at various points.
Yes, we did. It terrifies Shade. It absolutely terrifies Shade. And there's even that moment I was trying to rewatch this episode because like we said, we've recorded so many others, and so trying to remember, okay, what exactly was said. And there's this moment where I just pause for a long time, and it's definitely Shade going, nope, not going to deal with that right now. Not um that that would be very hard for her. That would be very hard for her. But I I don't think that, how do I word this? I don't think she would be interested in traveling. But the way I've been playing her is that she is growing in her empathy for her friends' choices and letting them make their own choices. And so although it would scare her, and although she doesn't want to travel because she's found a place, I think she could be in a state in which she would be okay with Ari traveling. Um, they always come back, and that means a lot to her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Laura would also like to know, what did Shade/you think of that discussion with Tommel?
Um, in that same conversation, you can see Shade pause, and again, she's compartmentalizing. Like, this is not the goal. this is not what we came here to do. Um, and I think in Shade's mind, this isn't our Tommel. So it doesn't matter what he has to say. And at the same time, she has to set her feelings aside for their Tommel, to make the mission happen. Um, and that's how I tried to play it in that scene is, okay, well, I've decided to trust Dane, and Dane said this Tommel is okay.
Mm-hmm.
The end. Like,
Yeah.
no more emotional processing. This is what she had to accept to make the events happen that needed to happen.
Right.
I tried to play Shade very goal oriented, complete the mission, and then whatever she needed to convince herself of in that. Um, I love the Ari Pog Tommel conversations. Just anytime Pog and Ari have that interaction about who Tommel is and who to trust and how to trust. I find all of those very entertaining.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to go out of order here because there's a question that I think really relates to what you're just saying. From Mia, it appears that Shade hasn't been as affected as Pog and Ari have by the last big fight in the conversation with Tommel. She still appears to be very focused and unwavering about the goal. If I'm correct in that, can you speak to Shade's mindset around recent events?
Yes. Yes, that's absolutely related to that response. Shade's mindset is, as Mia observed, very goal oriented. We have come here to kill Kulsir, to save Harazi, to save the timeline. This is this is what we need to do. Um, and Shade very intentionally doesn't want to muddle any of that with emotions, with questions of characters. That's just going to sidetrack her, and it's just going to make it harder for her to complete what she has to do.
Would you say that Shade uh, is, you mentioned compartmentalizing, is kind of compartmentalizing away the questions of what happens if we change the timeline that have started to come up around Solarka and Ilya and Kadric?
I was just thinking through that. I very much, and I don't remember now if I did a good job of it or not, but I tried not to react in a big way to the kids.
Mm-hmm.
Like, being impressed by them, but yeah, the emotional difficulty of the consequences of their actions if we're successful are terrifying. And especially, as Shade, like, she has such a small group that she cares about, and to know that these people that she does care about found positive things in this world, um and what Shade's doing is going to actively be taking that away, um would hinder her resolve. It would make it more difficult for her to get done what she needs to, and as quickly as she needs to.
Mm-hmm.
And so absolutely, it's part of protecting her and protecting what they're trying to do. um and I know that, um like, media consumption wise, it's less interesting that, like, Shay didn't engage in as much. Like, she didn't have
Yeah.
as many conversations or ask as many questions. Um, but just as a character choice, I thought that, like, her emotional bandwidth is just so narrow. Like, she couldn't handle that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. I observed. I don't know if it was noticed by all the viewers, but I definitely noticed that you kind of, even though you, Casey, definitely had facial reactions to the hilarity of the kids,
I did.
But you definitely kind of walled Shade off from that. Like Shade's not down on the floor wrestling with them. Shade's not engaging with. Shade's not, over on the side talking to Ilya the way Ari is over there um, talking to Kadric. It's just a very, very different reaction to it. Keeping
It
them
was
from.
very hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you definitely want to engage with all of these um, super awesome characters.
Well, good.
And setting. I love a post-apocalyptic settings, just
Yeah,
in general.
this was very fun to create. There's a question about it at the end, but this was a very fun thing to try and put together. Um, Mia's other question was, did Shade hear Ari's comment about being cold and unemotional? And if so, what do you think Shade would have thought of that, if anything?
Oh, this was the other one that I was trying to go back in the episode and listen for.
Ari was talking to Kadric, and he said he didn't. He also had a mixed track record with cold, unemotional women, or emotionally unavailable, I think is the word he used.
Okay, I do vaguely remember it because I was trying to figure out how to react. Um, because on one hand, Casey the player would obviously be offended if somebody called me cold and emotional or unemotionally unavailable. But I think that Shade is sort of uh, acknowledges that, like, that's true. It's, she is. I don't think she is. Oh, what is the word? I think she sees herself clearly enough that she
Mm,
understands that she is struggling with her emotions and that is hard on Ari, that she is so sort of ambiguous and unclear where he has been so very direct.
right. Yeah. Emily asks one more. Casey, how does Shade feel about the Dragon Blades referring to River as the Queen of Thorns instead of the Keeper of the Grove, or even just River? Are you concerned about this?
So scared. So scared. Yes. No, that was one of the other things that um Shade had to wall off. Like, she caught that comment and had to convince herself that, as Harazi said, like, it doesn't matter if we do this successfully. It doesn't matter if we do this successfully. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's not our current river. But yes, definitely Shade picked up on hearing her referred to as the Queen of Thorns, and a part of her wanted to immediately go check and see how River was doing.
Yeah. Although, how would you?
Oh, I had thought about that. I had thought about trying to sneak into the city to
Mm-hmm.
find if the silver tree was still
Piece of
there.
the tree. Yeah.
Yes, to
Yeah.
communicate with her.
Um, so that relates to Anathema's question. This is a two-part question for me about building a post-apocalyptic world state for Eberron. What are your favorite, least favorite parts? Is this a trope you would enjoy returning to in future campaigns or not? So oddly, this is the second time I've gotten to build a post-apocalyptic version of a world of a campaign that I'm running with Casey as a player.
I was about
Um,
to say, I know the
yeah.
other one.
um, it was. It's really fun. I'm a big history nerd, and I like alternate history and speculative history. And one of the things that Casey and I do at the school where we teach is run an annual history simulation for a bunch of students, and it usually starts at a very true moment in history, but obviously because it's high schoolers and they're agents of chaos by nature, it very quickly diverges, and so there's a lot of figuring out, okay, what would the ripple effects that matter in this bit be. Actually, the river stuff was a late realization that I needed to figure out what was up with River, because we had discussed that there was going to be a split where the Dragon Blades are going to go off and do one mission and the Strike Force is doing another. And this is not a spoiler. We filmed both of those things. The Dragon Blades is not happening off scene. We just changed up the cast. And Casey plays Thistle in that
So
story.
fun.
And that made it suddenly very important to figure out everything with River. And so thinking about that was a little bit of a late addition. The rest of it, so to the degree that anyone wants to know how to do this, the important thing is only worry about the things that are going to matter to the characters. Like, it doesn't matter what's happening in the Eldine Reaches, because our characters are never going to go there in this story, and it just won't affect anything. And so I think my favorite part was realizing that I got to really play with the consequences of the huge step forward that the party gave to Arandis Vol in her schemes. Like, it really did not occur to me. I really thought when they gave the sword to the Forgotten Prince that bridge was closed, that they had just cut me off. They had beaten me completely in my little sort of side scheme of working Arandis Vol towards her desires. And so when I got to bring her back in, that was very exciting. And when I realized that this was happening, and that gave me the opportunity to sort of imagine what she could do, because Arandis is one of the sort of classic bad guys of Eberron, a conflicted villain, but a villain. And really getting to imagine what she would be capable of if her long-term goal were achieved was very, very, very fun. So that, I think, was probably my favorite part. My least favorite part is just this came up in the watch party several times of how bleak all this is, and I'm trying to argue that it's dark but not bleak, because I don't like bleak fiction. Game of Thrones bums me out. Even The Walking Dead, which isn't always bleak, but even The Walking Dead, just I can't consume very much of it at a time, even though it's excellent. The big difference for me is the presence of some concept of hope, and so seeing that, getting to present Cadric and Ilya's romance that was just a reaction to something that Laura and Colin kind of played in the Rebel Warriors episodes, and imagining, well, it's long enough, they've surely got kids, that they would still have kids in spite of the world being all thrown apart. Imagining Solarka finding some way to be happy, getting to have those conversations where it's like, most people don't get to pick the life that they want to have. You just find a way to live the life that you have. I don't know if it's my least favorite part, because I think all those scenes are really good, but it's definitely you're hurting characters that you care about. Like, realizing that Arabella just narratively had to be dead for there to be something to present something interesting in the Dragon Blades, with what the interesting ways in which that would affect Donabella, to present Donabella as, when we were talking about the characters, and I kind of gave everybody a write-up of what the characters were like, what they'd been through. And Colin had been totally prepared to play Cadric as this sort of grim, grizzled old man Logan kind of character. But I had kind of presented him as, nope, Cadric always wanted to be a hero, and the world sucks, but Cadric is a hero. He's found a way to be the man he wanted to be. But to take Donabella from this kind of chaotic Tiny Tina character, and make her this very closed off, very callous, very angry character instead, was interesting as a writer and a world builder, but man, it sucks. And so my least favorite part is absolutely, you take these characters that you've built and you've embodied and you care about because you've embodied them, and you hurt them a whole lot to make the world the dark world that the genre requires, and to kind of, obviously I'm paying homage to an X-Men thing with the Age of Apocalypse, and killing Thora off. I love Thora. Thora is absolutely my favorite NPC. Killing Thora off is essential to the whole Age of Apocalypse thing, because you've got to have the X-Men being led by Magneto, and so just that's the part that's the most unpleasant. It's not necessarily not fun as a creative exercise, but it's definitely, it's a lot worse when you're going to play the characters. Like writing that Arabella is dead in my notes and imagining what that does to the Rebel Warren gang. Writing that Thora is dead and imagining what that does to Dane is one thing, and then having to play Dane as someone who's, I don't know if it's come through, basically empty, and is just proceeding because he owes it to the people who are following him. That's not fun. It's interesting creatively, but it's not fun. And then 2, is it a trope you would enjoy returning to in the world in the future?
I have a follow-up question.
Please.
Is it difficult, or difficult's not quite the word. Is it hard that you are creating this entire world and character history and these character arcs, knowing that if our characters are successful, we're only there for a short time? Like, you've had to develop so much backstory and history for these characters and what's going on in this world. Is it hard knowing that we might leave it quickly?
It is a little bit like, there are things that kind of appear on the edge of the narrative that, and this is always true when I'm DMing, there'll be things that sort of appear on the edge of the narrative that I'll be like, ooh, what's that? And want to chase it. Like I decided, okay, what's happened to the 5 nations, the standard kingdoms of Corvair, and I kind of suggested there's this leftover rump of it that's in the north central part of the continent, and it's ruled by Hallex and Diani Irwin Arn. These are 2 like fringe characters from source books that I find fascinating. Hallex is the son of the King of Breland, and is in the source materials is part of a foster hostage exchange in Karnath, and Diani is the blood regent of Thrain. Thrain's monarchy got overthrown a long time ago, and it's ruled by a theocracy now. Diani is the royal. She's the current member of the royal family. She would be queen, but for what has happened. And so immediately I'm like, I want to know, how these 2 different characters are now unified. How does the theocracy in Thrain come to fall, and Diani is a queen again? Like, I want to know how all those things happened. And so yeah, I definitely like to chase that stuff. And what is going on with the Moon Spears? What happened in the distraction effort over on the other side of the city? Like, part of me really wanted to kind of play that out, on some level. And I couldn't think of a good way to do it in a way that was manageable, because I don't have, D&D just doesn't do mass combat well. But yeah, how did these characters end up where they are? Like, we established where the Grimalkin kids were, and so far, and you will know where all the Grimalkin kids are by the end of the arc, but so far we've just encountered Pip. But how did they get there? What you decided about Nasaria was super intriguing to me, and like I was super wanted to like dig into that. And so there's just all these little things on the fringe of it that I haven't written a lot of, but definitely wanted to dig in more and, getting to know this version of Dane more. Um, I got to play not Hallex, Merrick's a lot for this, which was fun because I like Merrick's. Merrick's is a very divisive character in Eberron. He's either he's either Tony Stark or Lex Luthor, depending on
Ah,
where you go with him. And trying to kind of find a middle ground of that for this character, and presenting an interesting scenario where this character that all of our player characters have every reason to despise
right.
is someone that they have to work with and rely on. So yeah, it absolutely is. And to Anathema's follow-up question of whether it's something I would enjoy returning to in a future campaign, well, there's two ways I can read that. One is, would I want to run more stories in the Age of Kulsir? Yeah, I think it would be totally fun to occasionally do like a short adventure set in the Age of Kulsir, which is very much what's happened with X-Men. Is as every now and again we just venture over into the Age of Apocalypse because someone thinks what's happening with this character. So yeah, I absolutely think that like in places where we needed some filler episodes or something to do a return of the Dragon Blades or some other group of characters in the Age of Kulsir, that would be a lot of fun.
That would be a
Um,
lot of fun.
or just to run a post-apocalyptic Eberron as a future campaign, I also think would be a lot of fun. There's a whole lot of apocalypses possible in Eberron. Like Keith Baker has set up a world that is very much a powder keg, and there's just a whole lot of different fuses that could get lit. And so I think running some stories in Vol's Dominion in a zombie apocalypse setting where the zombies won is a
Oof.
very intriguing idea. So yeah, I would totally enjoy running some one shots in the Age of Kulsir, exploring other parts of it, seeing what's going on there, or just generally running other forms of post-apocalyptic Eberron would be a lot of fun. I think you could run some really good post-apocalyptic things in the past too, because you go way back and we've kind of touched on the fact that Zendrick is the way Zendrick is because dragons invaded and just broke everything. And so I think there would be
Right.
some very fun adventures if you went back and played in the immediate aftermath of the collapse of Kulsir's first empire. That would
Ooh.
be some very fun sort of ancient style role playing. So yes, I like this kind of trope, and the reason I like it is I'm a pretty optimistic person, and the I like the attitude of a character like Cadric. The world really has just gone to pieces, but it's right to keep doing this anyway. Of finding the hope and fortitude to keep trying in a situation like that, which is usually the theme of post-apocalyptic literature, unless you're
Yeah.
just really pessimistic, I guess. But most popular post-apocalyptic literature is about characters finding their humanity in spite of, even really cheesy things like Mad Max. The Mad Max stories are all about that. It's all about the world is horrible, but we can do something right.
Right.
The Walking
We
Dead,
can
it's we can be
help
humans even though the
others.
world is not. Yeah. So that's what I like about post-apocalyptic literature, is that the idea that while yes, darkness might provide opportunity for the worst parts of us, pressed to the wall, often the best parts of us also come out. I like that. So yes, that was a long and rambling answer to your question, but yeah, I like that trope in fiction. Hopefully, the next Laughing Tree campaign will not necessarily get to a point where I have to drag them forward into a post-apocalyptic wasteland. Um, I don't want to. I don't want to get repetitive. Plus, I've done it to Casey twice now, and that maybe is as many times as I owe it to her.
I enjoy the genre.
Yeah.
I also like the just the implication, because in both scenarios it was because of the player's actions.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the idea of, we're not just on a train track and things are happening to us, but as players, our decisions, our hesitations, our mistakes
Mm-hmm.
have real consequences.
Yeah.
And I think that narratively is interesting. How do they cope with that? How do they fix it if they can? What happens next?
And as a game master, it's really interesting because I think a lot of people tend to assume that if you have, and this is not exactly what happened this time, but it is what happened in our home game.
Right.
If the player characters just lose, like if they just get beat, that must mean, oh, story over. But it doesn't have to. Like there can be more
Yeah.
story even if the bad guy won. There are still stories worth telling, and so there are a lot of different ways this one could have gone than the way that it ultimately will go, and those are interesting to me as well. But yes, so yeah, no, I like it. It's a good genre, and it's a fun thing to do in an RPG.
Mhm.
And I think post-apocalyptic fantasy is not explored as much as I would love it to be in D&D. Like
Yeah.
there's the dark sun setting, but that's more like if you wanted D&D to be more like Mad Max. Um, but yeah. So anyway, well, that is all of our listener questions. If you would like to submit questions for the next Khyber Shards answers, you can do so over on our Discord, the link to which is in the description down below, along with links to all of our social media. New episodes of Khyber Shards drop on Monday, and new Khyber Shards answers on Fridays. And until next time, thanks for rolling with us.
Thanks, y'all.